Hi, I'm Fire Chief Stephen Rivard, BCC class of 1974. I grew up in the north end of Fall River, actually about 3 miles from here, and I got interested in being a firefighter when I was actually in 5th grade. My dad was a firefighter in the city of Fall River, where he spent 34 years. I would visit my dad at the fire station every opportunity that I had, and I'd always be looking at the trucks and be totally amazed at how they operated and wanted to learn how that all worked. And that was part of my decision. Even in high school, I knew that I wanted to be a firefighter. And I knew I had to do certain things with my education to become a firefighter. And I knew that to open those doors, by coming to Bristol Community College, those doors would be open. Formal education in the fire service in the early 70s was basically non-existent. And to come to a college and take a degree program in fire science, the fire science classes were only offered at night. And the reason they were offered at night, because they catered to the people who were already firefighters. They weren't catering to people who were intending on being firefighters. So in 1972, there were 3 of us in my first class of day students, if you will. And we took all our gen ed studies during the day, and at night we would take our fire science classes. And we'd take them with other there'd be all firefighters in the class, except for maybe 2 or 3 civilians, if you would. When I came to Bristol Community College, then District Fire Chief Louis Shea from the city of Fall River, I was in the first EMT class here at Bristol Community College, and that was relatively new. Being a registered emergency medical technician wasn't required back there in 1972 by the state. All you need to do was have a valid driver's license and know how to drive a vehicle. And we had 1 person on an ambulance. So I took the program here with Chief Shea, and halfway through the program he asked me to come visit him at the Globe Fire Station where he was working out of one night, and I couldn't understand why he wanted to speak to me. But he told me of this plan that he had to incorporate the ambulance service in the city of Fall River Fire Department, and asked me if I'd be interested in working with him on that. And becoming as I became an EMT, would I be interested in working for the city of Fall River on an ambulance. And that's where I began my career. I graduated from BCC in 1974, that June, and by January of 1975, I had been hired by the city of Fall River as an emergency medical technician, working on one of the first city-run ambulances that the fire department sponsored. And it was because of my affiliation with Bristol Community College. He was one of my instructors. He saw that I had some potential. He knew I wanted to become a firefighter. He laid that career path out for me, and it worked. And it's the same career path I lay out now for my students to come before me as an advisor. I tell them they need to become an emergency medical technician and move on to become a paramedic after that, quite frankly. But we use pretty much the same template, and it works. After I left here, I graduated in 74. In 75, I began my career in the Fall River Fire Department. And that same year, I began pursuing my baccalaureate degree at Providence College in fire science. I didn't go full-time. I took 1 or 2 courses a semester, and I finished that up in 1982. But after spending approximately 2.5 years at the Fall River Fire Department, there was a position open in the Somerset Fire Department for a firefighter EMT. I had my degree. I was working towards my bachelor's degree. I had spent some time in the city of Fall River and working on one of the busier rescue companies, the ambulances, if you will, in the city of Fall River, and got a lot of experience, applied for the job in Somerset, and was appointed in Somerset in 1977, where I spent the rest of my career. I worked my way up the ranks there to lieutenant. I worked as a training officer, a little bit of work as a shift commander. And then in 1988, an opportunity came open to become the fire chief in Somerset. I applied for the job, and I received the position and stayed there from 1988 as the fire chief till 2008. So 20 years as a fire chief, 34-year career in total. It was back in 1990, and the fire chief from Fall River, Fire Chief Louis Shea, who I used to be a student of his, now I was a fire chief with him. I was serving with him. It was quite an honor for me to serve with him as a fire chief, quite frankly. And at that young age, I always looked up to him. He was one of my mentors in my career. And he called me one day and he asked me to help him develop a program on leadership and command here. And so I worked with him for about a year on that. Him and I developed that program, and then we were going to teach it together. And all along he knew he was going to assign me that teaching job. He wasn't going to teach it with me, but I committed to teaching half of it. And as we went along, when it came time to teach the class, he said he didn't have the time to do it, and he asked me to do it, and I started teaching at that point. So I started off teaching leadership and command here. And unfortunately, he got ill and subsequently passed, and I applied for his position as the program director back in, might have been 92 at that time, and I received that and have been doing it ever since. I try to get out to meet with the various firefighters. I go to the firehouses throughout Bristol County. I talk to them about the fire science program at Bristol Community College. I try to get to some of the high schools and talk to the students about Bristol Community College. For the firefighters, I tell them it's an asset for them to come here and earn their degree in fire science. Number one, If they're taking a promotional exam, they get credits. They get points for earning their degree. And that's a great way of getting an advantage on someone taking a promotional exam. Also, for my students coming in, I tell them it's a great tool to have in their pocket that they have a degree in fire science already. I knew as a fire chief when I interviewed applicants, and they showed me that they had a degree in fire science, it was fantastic. They had an edge over everybody else. They had a leg up, if you will. And the education they get here at Bristol Community College is second to none. We've got some of the best fire instructors in the area here. We've got a fire instructor from Rivard Fire Department, from Acushnet Fire Department, from Attleboro, North Attleboro Fire Department, and we've got a mix of good leaders here teaching the courses.